on the right. And
we're there, and we'll bring you their speeches just as soon as they come down.
And Pat Dawson is still here with us, our political expert. And Pat, I think maybe at this point, let's give us some historical perspective here. We have Rudy Giuliani, now the first Republican mayor of New York City since Mr. Lindsay was mayor.
That's right.
It's been quite a while.
It is, but first of all, I have to say that I feel like a lot less of a political expert tonight after the conventional wisdom. And in fact, a lot of the things I believe were utterly thrown out the window.
It happens.
But in any event,
out there with the same feeling.
I will carry on the tradition of, in the tradition of journalism and show business, I suppose. Yeah, there are some interesting historical aspects to this. First of all, if the margin that we have now holds up, roughly speaking, this will be the closest mayoral election in this century, closer by roughly 10,000 votes than the last election, which was before this the closest election. 47,000 votes is the, right now we have 35,000 votes difference. 47,000 was the margin last time between Dinkins and Giuliani. Also, it is rather unusual in New York City for one-term mayors in recent history, if you think about it, and David Dinkins would be the first one since Abe Beame, who was voted out of office. He lost in the Democratic primary in '77, but of course Abe Beame was the victim of a fiscal crisis. But Koch served 3 terms. Before that, Lindsay, despite all of his problems, served 2. Before that, Wagner served 3 terms. And basically, you have to go back to the early 50s to find somebody who was only served 1 term and then was voted out, other than Beame. So it's only 2 mayors in the, basically in the post-war era. So one-term mayors are unusual, and certainly this mayor, I suppose, knows how it feels to be on both sides of a close election.
Let me ask you this. A lot has been said prior to the election about the hurt that would be inflicted on David Dinkins being the first black mayor of New York City and then to be defeated after 1 term.
Well, not just New York City, but in fact, of all the big city mayors, and when we talk about big city mayors, we're talking roughly about, let's say, the top 10, 15 cities in the country. If I'm not mistaken, David Dinkins would be the first black mayor of a major American city not to win re-election. All of them have won their attempt at a 2nd term, except for David Dinkins. But that, again, speaks to the whole issue of race, and I think that to the extent that it affected this race, it gets back to that whole issue about President Clinton, which was mentioned in the interview just a moment ago. And I think that to a large extent,
not since the days of John Lindsay have we had a fusion Republican-liberal mayor of New York. Let's go to the podium just for a second as we expect Mr. Giuliani to ascend the stairs with his family in a few moments
when he
and claim
becomes
victory.
mayor.
And when he speaks, we can expect a speech in which he will reach out to all the communities in a conciliatory tone. One of the most important responsibilities I think that he faces in trying to deal with the divisions in the city, especially since the vote was so close tonight.
Do we appreciate their efforts? That about sums it up. Look forward to seeing you soon, and God bless one and all. It's a joy to be with you on this absolutely historic occasion. Thank you so much.
Mr. Goodman said it is historic, and historic indeed. The ex-prosecutor who put away mafia chieftains but was also criticized for some of his Wall Street prosecutions as really, in some sense, has tried to portray himself as a modern-day Thomas Dewey, who was the district attorney for Manhattan, but who eventually lost his run for the presidency, with Ron Silver, who is speaking now. Next to him is Assemblyman Dov Hikind, who is a very activist Brooklyn assemblyman in the Jewish causes. And people are beginning to sing now, waiting for Rudy Giuliani. So as we wait, let's now go back to John and Cora Ann in the studio.
Thanks very much, Eric.
As you may not have heard, Eric, they are going to wait until the mayor concedes before Mr. Giuliani makes any sort of speech, as it should be done.
That's right. And while we're waiting for Mr. Giuliani to come down and speak, let's take a look at the numbers as we have it so far. In the race for mayor, with 95% of the precincts reporting, Giuliani 50%. Over Mr. Dinkins with 48% and Mr. Marlin with 1%. And I believe we also have some figures with Manhattan Borough President. We have some numbers coming up. Yes, 99% of the precincts reporting.
It's the Bronx.
Mr. Ferrer, 81. This is the Bronx, actually, with 81%. Over Richmond, 18%, and Brawley, 2%. And here we go. For Borough President in Brooklyn, 74% of the precincts reporting. Golden, 75%, over Giuliani with 25%. And here we go with the Manhattan Borough President, 89% of the precincts reporting. Ruth Messenger with 77%, over Reese with 21%, and Burns with 1%. And in Queens, 78% of the precincts reporting. Shulman with 65% and Spavins with 35%. And in Staten Island, with 61% of the precincts reporting, Molinari 95% over Grillo with just 5%.
Yeah, no surprise in any of those races. We have to find out how that secession thing
worked
came
out in Staten Island.
I don't know that we've had a final result on that, but maybe we can get that for you. And we've also got to find out something very, very important, this term limitations thing that none of the politicians wanted for obvious reasons. Although I think Giuliani came out in favor of that. But just about everybody, the councilman from Queens, Vallone, was against it, and a lot of the politicians who've been in office forever and ever, or want to be in office forever and ever, were also against it.
People that don't want it, so they don't want any career politicians.
Yeah, that's right. Well, when I know they all laughed when Lauder ran for mayor, and he spent $14 million of his own money, most expensive campaign ever, all of his own money. He is having the last laugh now because he's the one that sponsored this thing. He paid for it. He got it going, and he's going to change an awful lot of politicians' lives because of that. And I'm just betting that it passed. I don't know for sure that it did. Okay, we are going to do what now? I'm not exactly sure where we are. Oh, that's right. Mark Penn is still with us. You still up there, Mark? Okay, you're still up there.
Still here.
What? Give me some thoughts on what happened this evening here in the city.
Well, you know, I think that the message of change really is coming through. Term limits, Republican mayor, Republican governor. These are two areas that voted overwhelmingly Democratic. I think these voters were unhappy with their incumbents, but it only really was at the top. All the minor officials are all reelected overwhelmingly. There's no real structural change in that. And again, I keep coming back to the fact that change in New York City is brought about by a shift here of maybe 2% from last time. Turnout for the black community doesn't appear to be as high as it had to be in order for Dinkins to win re-election.
Why do you think that was, Mark?
I don't know. I think they probably spent a lot of money today on an organization that probably didn't perform. You know, it's a campaign that had a reputation of disorganization and fiscal mismanagement. And when it came to running a turnout operation, I suspect they really weren't up to that task, and that was what they needed to do to win. They said they'd registered all these new voters. Turnout is almost exactly the same as it was. In fact, turnout will probably be a smidgen lower because they say they registered a lot of new voters, and the total vote is almost exactly the same as 4 years ago.
That would be very, very surprising to me. Okay, let's get some results from Long Island, Corianne.
Okay, let's see what the numbers have so far. In the county executive race, here we go. Nassau County Executive, 34% of the precincts reporting. Mr. Galata, 51% over Zwern with 47%. And I think we're going to go to Mario right now. Mario Bosquez is standing now live for us at our Long Island Bureau. Mario, are you out there?
Thank you, Corianne. The excitement, the energy continues to be in the air here in Westbury. Galata now can be officially called. Of course, the celebration here, now officially 10 straight election wins for Galata under his GOP belt. Lots of celebrating continuing to go on here at the campaign headquarters here in Westbury. The chants and cheers were more of a mantra saying 4 more years for the GOP incumbent. Although even on stage, the Republican
going a little over a bit because it's a notable group of people. A lot of them stuck their neck out, as it were, to support Rudolph Giuliani. There's Emilio Carrillo, for instance, who was a former health commissioner under David Dinkins. Ruben Franco, who used to be with the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund. Carlos Rivera, the former fire commissioner, is up there. There are people there from, of course, the bulwark of the Republican Party. There are some folks who burned some bridges in their communities, in Latin communities, a couple in black communities, a couple in Democratic Party circles, and they were holding their breath on this one. They did stick their neck out, and now they have come out a winner. Of course, now this is all really just preparation. They are waiting for their guy. They're waiting for Rudolph Giuliani to come down and address the troops. But they say here that that is not going to happen until after David Dinkins makes his speech. So right now, it's a time of waiting. Back to you.
All right, Pablo, thank you very much. Let's find out how much longer we might have to wait. For that, let's go over to David Dinkins' campaign headquarters, where John Miller is standing by. John?
Well, Matt, we expect to see David Dinkins down here within just a few minutes. We were told that he spoke on the telephone to Rudolph Giuliani about 15 minutes ago, and that they exchanged their messages. And that is probably where the arrangement that the mayor would speak first was born out of. Of course, the mood in this room, as you can pretty much hear on the audio, the difference between the mood that Pablo Guzman is standing amidst is somewhat more somber. So we are waiting for him to come down. In the last few minutes, the room has filled with many of his key supporters, many of his key aides, his key campaign workers, who have all been huddled with him on the 21st floor of this hotel, watching those returns come in and reading the handwriting on the wall. So we are waiting for him to come into this room and deliver his concession speech, and we expect that to be within a few minutes, and we'll be back with it.
I tell you, that's going to be something to hear, you know, after 4 years. And I know that recently he was talking about the whole race issue, you know, and he said he wanted to get away from that at the end, that too much time had been spent there. He said, I want you to judge me by the content of my heart, not the color of my skin.
And this anti-incumbent sentiment, I think, overturned him, but also perception that his leadership was ineffective and the Korean boycott, Crown Heights, and so forth. And yet, you know, the overriding issue, the crime issue, he really did a lot. He added 6,000 cops to New York.
And the stats were down for 2 years.
Right.
He was very proud of that.
Yeah,
He talked about it a lot.
so I think that, you know, it's a mixed bag.
But the polls also said that people really felt that the quality of life was worse, that crime was worse, no matter what the statistics
Absolutely.
said.
Perception was that. And the contrast in the personalities. Here's this soft mayor perceived as compassionate, caring, a natty dresser, avuncular, and Rudy Giuliani, the bulldog in personality and dress, his rumpled off-the-rack suits, tough guy, highly intelligent, a real lawyer, believes in being, in delegating only that which he knows about, whereas this mayor has been much more of a delegator, perhaps, than Rudy Giuliani will be.
All right,
Thank you, Gabe.
Obviously, a lot more goes into an election than raw numbers. Issues also make an election. And with more on the issues that affected voters in the mayoral election, let's go upstairs to Ralph Penza and Lee Miringoff. Ralph?
All right, I just want to make one observation. First, John Miller a moment ago talking about the somber mood at the Dinkins headquarters. It occurred to me as John was talking that the somber mood may also be in evidence in Albany. Just think that Governor Cuomo, obviously likely planning to run next year. Well, now he's got an enemy at City Hall in New York, a political enemy at least, and there's going to be some second guessing where the governor is concerned as to whether he campaigned hard enough and early enough and strong enough for David Dinkins. One little fact that's going to lay out there tomorrow, and that is that Giuliani becomes the first challenger, Lee, to unseat an incumbent since 1933. And who did it in 1933? Fiorello LaGuardia. I wasn't there. I know Gabe was there at the
That's
time,
who Giuliani says he models himself after. So,
what's your observation then on this race?
I think, you know, I'm struck by the lack of turnout this time. I mean, we had almost half the voters stay home. I'm struck by the absence of the debates and the fact that this campaign, in terms of issues, didn't really set an agenda, not for Giuliani nor for Dinkins. So I'm not sure what the election means other than the voters wanted to go in a different direction, at least a couple thousand more than voted for Dinkins. And I think the voters were deprived of hearing the debates, because I think that would have helped.
Also, now you know there has to be, I would imagine, some deep bitterness in the black community. Would you not say so tonight?
Well, I mean, they had their chance to vote, and they did, but I think that that's going to be the problem for Rudy Giuliani, for the black voters who clearly are disappointed tonight. That community, it's a major setback. For the Latino community.
A lot of healing is going to have to take place after all of this,
and he's
right?
going to have to move in that direction to try to reconcile those feelings.
All right, folks, let's go back upstairs. Or is that downstairs?
Yeah, downstairs. Ralph,
Late,
thank you very much.
Downstairs.
Before we go back out and update you on the fires in Los Angeles, I want to talk one thing. Last Thursday night might have been a telling night in this campaign, Gabe, because it was the night that President Clinton came to town, stumping for David Dinkins and made the campaign appearance. Dinkins was very proud to be standing on the stage with the president. But it was also the night that Rudolph Giuliani appeared on Channel 2. It was supposed to be a one-on-one debate. Dinkins didn't show up, and Rudolph Giuliani got 1 hour of unopposed airtime.
I think that Rudolph Giuliani gained from the mayor not showing up, but he also lost when he didn't show up for a debate in which Marlin, the conservative candidate, was with Dinkins right here. So I think that was kind of a wash.
But close to the election, just a few days ago, those undecided voters looking at that.
It probably hurt. I think as I read the polls, the voters were turned off on both of them for failing to debate.
But one of the things we seem to learn here is that the president's arrival had virtually no impact. I mean, the testing that was done afterwards said that it really hadn't changed any minds. I mean, that this national, not interference isn't the right word, but presence.
It's always been done. If you read American history, Franklin Roosevelt toured the country and endorsed different candidates. He was a very popular president, but it never did any good, even when he was at the height of his popularity. I think this is bunk to think that a leader can transfer his popularity to somebody else who's running for office.
So do we make too much of endorsements in races like this, like Carlos Rivera coming over and Robert Wagner Jr. speaking out for Giuliani? Do we make too much of that?
Those were important Democrats, though.
Robert
Wagner.
I think it helps, but I don't think that it's major. I think Ed Koch obviously helped because a lot of people still regard his age as the golden age, you know, at City Hall.
All right, we're going to take a look at a figure right now that might help us understand this. This is the mayor's race with George Marlin figured in, okay? With 99% of the vote right now, 51%, as we've already said, for Rudolph Giuliani, to 48% for David Dinkins, and the 1% for George Marlin. I would assume, Gabe, that most people would have felt that 1% would have come directly away from Rudolph Giuliani.
No question, and that's what his strategists felt. David Garth and his campaign manager, Peter Powers, felt that Marlin would draw away from him, and that's why they didn't want to participate in a debate in a close election. I mean, with Marlin present.
Okay, Gabe. Thanks so much. Let's go back to the boards, Gabe. You've been giving us some input on this. We're going to look at the mayor's race borough by borough. This is, again, with George Marlin. The chicken, of course, he'll be remembered for that. You know, let's not forget George Marlin's chicken.
The foul debate.
Okay. The New York City mayor's race in Manhattan, David Dinkins took Manhattan, 61% of the vote to Rudolph Giuliani's 38%.
That's a little less, I believe, than last time, but about, you know, roughly the same.
Gabe, this is the number you said that was fairly telling right here. The Brooklyn numbers, 50% for David Dinkins, 49%. I think, as a matter of fact, you and I were speaking a little earlier, you maybe even expected that Giuliani would have to do better than that in Brooklyn.
Yes, but he did very well in Queens. If you go to the next board, I assume the next board is Queens.
Before we do that, we also want to bring Ralph Penz in, who I think wants to make a comment on what we're seeing here.
2 to 1.
It's the Queens.
Almost.
Ralph, you have a comment on the Queens?
Yeah, I was going to just trade with Gabe there. So much depended on Brooklyn and on the turnout in the black community in Brooklyn, Gabe. And so much work was done there by Bill Lynch and others, and yet it appears to have failed. And I was just wondering what you thought about that, you know?
I don't know. I think that they worked very hard to motivate the minority vote. We'll have to analyze it further, but I don't think they got as much as they expected.
Well,
you know, you and I have chatted so much, Gabe, very frankly, you and I have talked so much about the concern that we all have about the racial divisiveness in this town and the bitterness that goes on. And it occurs to me that as a result of this vote, there may be a shrinking now, both in the black community and in the Latino community. And I just wonder if Rudolph Giuliani is not going to, at this point, have to make some very key appointments in his administration that come from the minority community, and I do mean key appointments.
Oh, absolutely. He's going to have to show that he really cares about them, because otherwise he is going to not be able to govern this city properly.
Right. I think that's one of, it's going to be probably.
If we have lost, how are we going to fix it? Never mind what we lost, how are we going to fix it? Fix it. Don't be sitting here crying and moaning. It means you didn't do what you set out to do. It means you didn't work hard enough. It means you didn't reach enough people. And by the way, it means our mayor didn't answer to us either. So he has to take his lumps. But how are we going to fix it? That's all I have to say.
Only said it.
Stay right here.
Right here.
We don't know who that lady is. We don't know who that lady was. I don't think anybody knows who that lady was or how she got up there. She certainly was part of the Dinkins inner campaign people, because the only people that are getting up to the stage have identifications on, saying that they're part of the Dinkins Victory Night. It was the identification tags say the Dinkins Victory Party. Of course, that is not what this turned out to be. It turned out to be a very crushing defeat, crushing to the spirits of the people here. Certainly not an overwhelming defeat by Mr. Giuliani. When you have well over 1 million votes, probably 1.5 million votes so far tallied, and a difference of 30,000 votes, it's not a huge victory, but it doesn't matter. A victory is a victory. A win is a win, and a loss is a loss. And David Dinkins is now part of the history of New York City. And Rudolph Giuliani has his job before him to see where he will guide the history of New York City in the future, where it's going to be going. Recount. People are yelling for a recount. That's not surprising. But I don't think that Mayor Dinkins is going to be saying that we need a recount. Expected that the mayor, who is apparently entering the room right now, yes, he is. You can't see the mayor, but Bruno, if you go over there, where you see those lights coming backwards, that's Mayor Dinkins coming into the hall. The crowd cheering David, David, as Mayor Dinkins comes into the hall. The band sort of faintly picking up with a little light music for this rather heavy occasion for Mayor Dinkins and his supporters, for his family, for the politicians who wedded to him throughout this campaign. You can see the mayor is right at the edge of the stage right now, and will soon be coming up. Apparently the mayor has already talked to Rudolph Giuliani by telephone. We don't know what he said to Mr. Giuliani or what Mr. Giuliani said to him. Obviously, Mr. Giuliani has been also watching and waiting for the mayor to come up. He's still giving that characteristic Dinkins thumbs up to the crowd as he is he's coming up. He's up on the stage now, hugging, kissing his supporters as he comes across, passing Mario Biaggi, Reverend Herbert Daughtry, shaking hands. His constant companion, Arnie Segura, giving him a hug, and his wife, Joyce, right behind him. Mayor Dinkins. The loser in this election, but a man of grace, always. Still smiling. Although he must be smiling with a very heavy heart right now. Mayor Dinkins.
I just want to make sure. Let my son and my daughter in here. Yeah. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for my daughter and my son and my bride to get in position here. Is my sister all right there? Trying to make sure that my friends, my brothers and my sisters, the people have spoken. They have, and I respect their judgment, and I respect their decision. And we all must respect their judgment and their decision. Just moments ago, Just moments ago, I called Rudolph Giuliani and congratulated him. I congratulated him on his election as the 107th mayor of the city of New York. I told him that I was going to call upon the people of our city to stand with him. And so I say to you, stand with our next mayor. He needs our partnership. He has earned it. And I pledge him my partnership. We must reject Please. We must reject the notion that what has happened today is anything other than a fair and forthright call for change. We fought hard during these difficult months of decision, just as we have fought hard during these past 4 years, to open new doors of justice and opportunity for New Yorkers, to build bridges among people and to break the bonds of indigence and ignorance and fear, to unite our city through the strength of our principles and the courage of our compassion. We have a right to be proud of our progress. We have accomplished so very much. And in defeat as in victory, we owe it to our children not to give up or give in or turn back. Four years ago, we were joined by our highest ideals and our best hopes. And tonight, even in this hard hour, we are joined by that same commitment to strive and to struggle, to lift up those who have been left out, to ensure that the promise of New York is not the privilege of generations past, but the birthright of generations to come. You see, my friends, elections come and go, candidates come and go, mayors come and go, but the life of a city must endure. And that which we have achieved together is bigger and better than any political party or any partisan purpose. My friends, we have made history in the city of New York, and nothing can ever take that away from us. Of course, I'm disappointed by today's election. When you seek to help and to heal, there's precious little glory in defeat. But I've lost my share of political contests in the past, and I've not lived a life without adversity. So I know that the true test of our principles is how we turn adversity into opportunity. The true test of our beliefs is how we discover in the ashes of adversity that spark that keeps our spirit strong. We must all reach out to Mayor-elect Giuliani. We must. We must reach out to him as I reached out to him just moments ago.